We're reacting to the bird tier list by one of my absolutely favorite creators, TierZoo's. Let's go and see what this damn hedgewig looking owl is about to do right here. Let's be honest, we saw it coming, right? There was only one possible outcome.
Birds are one of the most popular playable classes in the game, with a huge number of successful builds and tons of cool strategies.
That's gorgeous.
However, some of these strategies have clearly been more successful than others. So today we'll be going over the bird tier list to see which bird ranks highest.
What's with the PvP? What's with the bird-on-bird violence? We can't have inter-clan fighting like this, man.
But before we get into looking at specific bird builds, let's do an overview of the basic attributes and special abilities the bird faction has access to,
I bet pigeons
as well as
are
a quick rundown of the history of the bird faction. So birds are one of the newer factions in the game, joining the game's roster during the latter part of the Mesozoic expansion.
That's crazy.
They began as an offshoot of the dinosaur faction that was specifically adapted to arboreal gameplay, but when the devs dropped the Cenozoic balance patch, these small avians were the only dinosaurs not to be hit by the banhammer. Fast forward
That's
to
a
today.
hell of a banhammer. Can we just talk about it? Like, the way that Thor's Mjorn, or whatever, however you say it, you're all gonna flame me in the comments. I'm sorry I mispronounced it. Thor's Mjorn to, like, your little toddler's little toy hammer is like a normal dev's banhammer to the meteor. Like, that's such a huge discrepancy in power.
Birds are one of the most successful factions in the game.
Damn.
Owing this success to a handful of powerful, unique abilities, in addition to the obvious flying attribute. First
Beaks
of which
are
is their
scary,
beak.
yeah.
Now, beaks were not an entirely new ability for the reptile player base, but birds went far deeper into the beak skill tree than most dinosaurs ever had, with many bird players opting for extremely specialized beaks to give them an edge in specific scenarios.
It hurts.
However, even the basic beak offers plenty of advantages. While their lack of teeth does mean that they deal reduced damage with their bite attack, birds can be far more accurate with their pecking attacks, enabling them to hit weak points or secure grabs on smaller targets, such as the thin hurt box of a snake. Beaks also
That's literally how my wife and I look every time we're trying to get rid of a spider. We're like, the way that bird like kind of ran away, went forth and ran before the clap
protection, potentially reducing headshot damage and nullifying imprecise counterattacks. Beaks also offer some of the best stab type damage in the game, which when used accurately can deal massive damage on crit. Beaks are also excellent tools for dealing with parasites. In fact, they're so good that oftentimes other less dexterous players will party up with bird support players in order to have a better matchup against parasites.
Honestly.
Feathers are also a unique and powerful trait exclusive to birds that provides excellent cold protection without causing the user to become too over-encumbered to fly. Feathers also offer pretty substantial defense against crush-type attacks, which is especially important to birds because of their hollow bones trait. Hollow bones are another ability meant to synergize with the flying playstyle. Now, a common misconception is that bird bones are hollow in order to reduce equipment load, but actually they're hollow in order to let bird players fill them with air, which grants them a massive boost to their maximum stamina. Without this, it'd be extremely tough for a bird to fly for any significant period of time.
This is the most beautiful bird I think I've ever seen, guys. Can we just take a moment to appreciate this? This bird
would be extremely tough for a bird to fly for any significant period of time.
Look at that colorway. This looks like a Jordan. This is beautiful.
The trade-off, of course, is that a broken bone not only deals serious damage, but also potentially reduces the player's maximum stamina by a huge margin. So a bird player will need all of the blunt damage defense it can get. And speaking of blunt damage, the bird's lower bone density means the bird's own blunt force strikes, like wing attacks, also deal reduced damage.
It's like the bird version
of
a
top-tier bird builds are the ones that can best capitalize on the strengths of their class while mitigating potential weaknesses. That about covers the basics, so let's get into the tier list.
Okay, chat, we need to figure this out. Comments, we need to figure this out. Before, we've got a little bit of a teaser. What birds do we think are going to be high? What birds do we think are going to be low? I think Golden Eagle is going S tier, baby. Birds of prey, baby. S tier Golden Eagle. Pigeons at A tier. I want some S tier Golden Eagle, A tier pigeons, and I'm thinking like in the lower tier, there might be some Kiwis. Kiwis are going to be low tier, right? Something like that. Chat comments before. You have to guess as well, all right? I'm just rooting for a golden... Yes!
At the bottom of the tier list,
Let's
we have
go!
2 flightless bird builds.
Let's go!
Both with essentially the same glaring weakness.
They are adorable,
These are
though.
the kiwi and kakapo. Kiwis are hilariously part of the same faction as ostriches, emus, and cassowaries. For some reason, they opted to give up the flight ability, but didn't use the extra available skill points to spec into gigantism like the rest of their squad did.
They're so
The
cute,
result
though.
is a build that can literally only exist on island servers where there is no active mammal player base, aka New Zealand. The
I feel like
kakapo
they're
is a
just
flight-
they're a noob who accidentally joined a PvP server when they were trying to do like really low difficulty level PvE, but they're such a noob that they accidentally joined the wrong server and they're like, "Whoa! Why are people showing up and trying to kill me? I just wanted to build stuff and have a good time being a cute little kiwi."
Flightless version of the parrot, and although parrots are undoubtedly excellent bird builds, the flightless weakness is too glaring to ignore.
It's
Due
pretty
to
though.
invasive species like rats and cats establishing a presence on island servers, both of these flightless bird builds are seeing major declines in their player base, and I would not be surprised if they all ended up switching mains. Flight is just too strong an ability to pass up, which brings me to the next builds on my tier list.
Ratatites?
So I see what these builds were going for. Being giant could potentially make up for the lack of flight, but in practice this didn't quite pan out. While these are technically the strongest birds in terms of base power and defensive stats, for their weight class they are woefully underpowered.
That's fair.
They're one
Very
of the few
fair.
megafauna builds that can be taken down by cheetahs, when they should be able to completely annihilate cheetahs with their powerful claws. Their huge weak point presents a lot of opportunity for counterattack too, so if they ever get too bold, they're setting themselves up for a tough loss. Lastly, the fact that they are forced to nest on the ground forces them into an even more vulnerable position than most birds.
I always think ostriches, especially when they're moving around, kind of look like Victorian women at dances, at ballrooms with all the ruffles and kind of even the, I don't know, the body language as well. Like a very mythed Victorian woman on a dance floor is the first thing I think about with ostriches.
As ratite
in a
eggs
fancy
are
dress.
extremely valuable as loot. Objective defense is not an easy task
wanna eat
even
an
for
ostrich
high-tier
egg.
builds, so for ostriches, emus, and cassowaries, this is a huge hurdle.
Oh yes,
Next
they're
on
so
the tier list,
pretty.
we have the Hummingbird. This build spec'd purely into mobility
There we
and just
go.
about nothing else, and as a result is the only bird build with full 360-degree movement, similar to a dragonfly.
Or a helicopter.
This, combined with its extremely small size, enables the Hummingbird to very quickly change direction mid-flight,
They're gorgeous.
allowing it to easily dodge attacks and fly around obstacles. More importantly, it allows the Hummingbird to access nectar, which is an extremely valuable source of energy that's normally inaccessible to birds, since birds are usually too heavy to land on flowers and not agile enough to access nectar mid-flight. This all sounds great, but the Hummingbird also has 2 very serious weaknesses. The first is pretty obvious. They have no combat prowess at all, and any attack they fail to dodge will send them right back to the character select screen.
What?
But in addition to that, the
What? A
insane
praying mantis can take down a hummingbird? I had no idea a praying mantis could take a hummingbird out. That's crazy.
energy cost of their flight ability,
That's
combined with their
horrifying.
total lack of fat storage, means hummingbirds will run out of stamina very quickly if they can't constantly find food. To me, this is a high risk.
Excuse me, I'd really like a turn. Excuse me. This looks like when 2 kids are waiting. Like there's a kid waiting to play on the swing set when there's someone else on it, and they're just like, "Come on, I want to play. Come on, let me play." But they like can't touch the other kid because that's against the rules. But they're like aggressively like loitering.
High reward strategy
Waiting for their
where the
turn.
risk far outweighs the reward, so I have to place them in F tier.
But aesthetics, they are S tier. No,
At the
pigeons
bottom
are
of D
low.
tier, we have the Pigeon.
But they're
The Pigeon build doesn't
everywhere.
really have any critical flaws,
They're
but they're held
everywhere.
back by mediocre stats. In particular, the Pigeon is sorely lacking in any combat-focused stat, like power or defense. They do best in cities where their excellent navigation ability grants them an extra bit of safety, by nesting among high-rises in loot-rich locations. But even in cities, Pigeon players tend to be the main source of XP for
Wow.
higher-tier predators.
Wow.
Plus, if you're just looking to play a bird build that's good at looting cities, there are better options available anyway.
Fair. Oh, I hate
Peacock
peacocks. S tier aesthetics. The town I grew up had peacocks that literally wandered around everywhere. You couldn't kill them. If you accidentally hit one with a car, you were like fined hundreds of dollars. And these bastards would just walk around everywhere in the streets causing backups. They have an attitude. Peacocks have such an attitude.
Another generally understated build, with high HP but little else to rely on.
But they're beautiful.
It does, however, have one of the highest intimidation proficiency bonuses in the game, gaining a massive buff to all intimidation checks when its Eye Spot feather ability is activated. As impressive as this ability is, the Peacock's actual attacks do very little damage, so any player able to resist being frightened will have a pretty easy win. The Peacock's diamatic display also blocks vision behind itself, making a stealth approach by a third-party attacker extremely easy. And while they can escape by flying, the feathers of a peacock are so heavy that getting airborne takes a bit longer than most birds, which can be the difference between dodging or dying when under attack.
Ow.
The Flamingo is a bit of an AFK class. Very minimal skill is actually required to pilot this build. They opted to spec into the filter feeding ability, meaning all they really need to do to gain experience and progress their character is pick a random spot in the lake bed and start digging around with their beak, scoring free wins against things like snails and shrimp. However, when faced with a challenge...
I had no idea. For some reason, my dumbass thought flamingos were eating fish that whole time.
Any player anywhere near its size, this build totally falls apart.
Whoa.
They rely on water to impede the approach of predators in order to give them time to escape when attacked.
Man, birds
However,
fight each
this
other
doesn't
a
always
lot.
work.
Baboon!
Their pathetic defensive stats mean they go down in 1 or 2 hits, and their slow flight startup means that oftentimes players will have time to rush them down even when they're in the water.
That's crazy.
This is an easy build to rack up a bunch of experience with, but also a very easy build to defeat if you know their weaknesses.
That got yoinked.
The humble chicken, often compared to the T-Rex to exemplify how far the dinosaur faction has fallen. While I disagree with the implication, I don't disagree that chickens are indeed a low-tier build. While they aren't anywhere near as totally helpless as the kiwi or kakapo, they're still a barely average statted bird that lacks the ability to fly for any extended distance. They can certainly hold their own against most similarly sized opponents, but with poor escape options and no unique abilities, this build faces an uphill battle against most opponents. Well, okay, I shouldn't say no unique abilities, but to be honest, their fast respawn rate kinda backfired on them due to humans using the factory farming strategy. Next in C tier we have the Vulture build, the tankiest variant of the Raptor subclass. A good tank build needs to be able to accomplish 2 things. The first is area denial, which vultures do quite well. A few of them can easily lock down a carcass, one of the most contested points of interest you'll ever see on the map. They can do this because of their large size and acidic projectile attack. The other thing a tank must...
Vultures spit acid and no one told me? No one told me that vultures spit acid? I could be going about my day, encounter a vulture, and get yoinked on? I feel like it's something I should have been warned about.
Good at is shrugging off hits, and this is where vultures fall short.
Dang.
Their thick feathers easily shield them completely from smaller attacks, but because of their hollow bones, blunt fours can easily crush their defenses and take them down in only a hit or 2. So while they can defend a carcass from hordes of smaller scavengers, they don't have much counterplay towards bigger, more aggressive brawlers.
The command post is now under hostile control.
Oh, that game is goated.
The Woodpecker build spent the bulk of their evolution points optimizing and perfecting the peck attack, both in power and efficiency.
I've always wondered if woodpeckers gave themselves CTE, or if it just didn't matter, because, you know, like, I mean, bird brain is saying for a reason, right? But all of that head trauma, do they have CTE? I just want to know.
One goal in mind, to be able to hit insect players through cover. Burrowing is one of the safest, most effective ways insect players can avoid combat. But the woodpecker absolutely demolishes this strategy. One of the main advantages of this strategy is that having a powerful beak that's highly effective at drilling through wood also just means you've got a super sharp beak that's highly effective as a general purpose weapon. One of the main disadvantages of this strategy is that pecking at wood gives the woodpecker's location away, alerting more powerful predators to its presence while it's in the middle of pecking and is distracted.
That's kind of bad.
One particular woodpecker build, the toucan, opted to spec into more bulk and an even more powerful beak, which, while less useful for attacking insects through the wood, is still extremely powerful for PvP.
Toucans look like it takes them about 3 hours to turn their head. Owls are like, yep. Toucans are like, they have to swing such a giant thing around.
Interesting strategy. By no means flawless, but definitely has some solid strengths.
Penguin!
So, I know I've been pretty hard on flightless birds up until now, so you might be surprised to see me rate penguins as upper mid-tier rather than low tier. difference is
high
penguins actually
schoolers
swap
fighting.
out their wings for an arguably equally viable alternative, flippers, which
Ooh.
essentially allow them to fly through the water with incredible agility. This gives them a downright broken matchup against fish. However, this strategy is pretty much only viable on servers where there are no land-based predators that
fish.
penguins would still need to worry about. So if for whatever reason a few polar bears ever spawn in the Antarctic server,
big boy.
it's kind of game over for that entire build. The predators they have to contend with in the water are even more dangerous, and while their agility does help them dodge attacks, ultimately it's still a totally one-sided matchup. Their strategy is pretty cool and actually fairly dominant due to limited competition, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the entire penguin player base collapse if the devs ever add new DLC in the form of an Antarctic land predator, or even if they just buff the land mobility of the leopard seal. Still, top of C tier is a respectable position for a flightless bird.
It's kind of hilarious how that leopard seal is just chilling. Like, yeah, no point in even going after you guys. When we're on the land, it's neutral territory. What's up, buddies? Yeah, I'll try to kill you later when we're in the water. But for now, enjoy yourself, bud. Enjoy yourself. When we clock in, I'll go
bottom
after
of
you.
B tier, we have the Goose.
I hate
I've
these
got an
bastards.
entire video dedicated to the Goose build, but in short, the Goose has solid base stats, including above average hit points.
They're so angry.
However, its abysmal power stat leads it to rely heavily on intimidation to secure territory.
Yeah.
This can be unbelievably effective at times, and it's not uncommon to see top tier predators flee an encounter that they easily could have won.
They're just like, what the hell? This thing's so aggressive. If anything gives you guys confidence that, like, you fake it till you make it works, it's seeing a stupid-ass goose tear down a tiger and a gorilla. That should tell you guys, just go into whatever job interview with massive amounts of confidence and project that image, and everyone will just go like, wow, you know, doesn't seem like this guy's qualified, but he surely thinks he is. Must be for some reason.
Still, the obvious flaw in this strategy is that if the Goose's opponent resists being frightened, the Goose will be wide open to a punishing counterattack. In addition, the Goose's weak spot is easily exploitable by intelligent players, so careless aggression tends to be the Goose's biggest strength and biggest weakness at the same time. All in all, still a surprisingly effective strategy.
Herons are cool
The
looking
Heron
too.
build put a huge amount of evolution points into maxing out the puncture damage it can deal with its beak, and it did so to great success. Herons have one of the highest damage pecs of any bird, and frequently one-hit their targets, even those with scale armor like large fish and juvenile crocodiles. The effectiveness of their piercing attack is amplified by their long neck, which gives their
Steve Irwin's spirit animal because they're literally the crocodile hunter.
attacks a deceptively long range, giving their strikes an almost cobra-like flash to them. They have downright oppressive matchups against fish, amphibians, and all other small aquatic builds. One vulnerability
So
they do
fast.
have is that their flight ability has a lot of startup, making it a bit less reliable as an escape option if they do happen to get ambushed. Still, it's certainly not terrible. Another weakness is that their long neck presents a bit of a weak point, making lunging forward with repeated pecking attacks a bit risky if you get too predictable about it. Good players will be able to punish careless lunges quite hard.
Oh! Did you guys see that? They just got murked. That just got baited. They just got baited. They drew
In
out that
high B
attack.
tier, we have the Falcon, a
These are
raptor build that
gorgeous.
opts to defeat its opponents using speed and superior maneuvering rather than actual power. Falcons actually have a below average power stat for a raptor, and don't deal particularly high damage in close combat. Their talons are pretty small compared to hawks, owls, and eagles, and so instead of slashing and stabbing with their claws, falcons actually punch with their feet to disorient or concuss their target.
Really?
And then finish the fight with their more powerful beak. In the right situation, this can deal absolutely massive damage, enough to one-shot a mid-sized target at full HP.
So basically, they turn themselves into a projectile and fling themselves at their target. That's kind of badass.
The drawback of this strategy is that falcons can only dish out high damage when they have the time to build up speed first. This makes the falcon a pretty poor defender for objective game modes, and means the falcon can struggle to win fights if its first attack doesn't connect, as follow-up attacks will likely not have the same force built up as the first. Still, the burst damage potential of this build cannot be ignored,
like
so
Donkey
it earns
Kong's
its
down
spot in
B.
high B tier. This might seem like an odd inclusion to cap off B tier, but songbirds are a highly efficient build for their size, and do deserve recognition on this tier list.
Really?
This is a huge group, including finches, starlings, sparrows, wrens, and birds of paradise.
Well, these are probably the second prettiest birds after hummingbirds, don't you guys think?
And while some are flashier than others, they all have relatively similar stats, with extremely high agility being their core stat.
They're so pretty.
Unlike many of the builds lower on the tier list that have difficulty getting themselves airborne quickly, songbirds have extremely low startup on their flight move, allowing them to reposition themselves easily and quickly.
So fast!
This makes their approach very difficult to punish, making songbirds
they're so
excellent
quick.
at chipping away at defensive players, and makes them great at stealing loot from slower builds.
Yoink.
Their safety in numbers strategy can actually be somewhat intimidating and disorienting too, making it rather difficult to attack a party of songbirds.
And can we
mid-flight.
say it's absolutely charmed. It's absolutely just charmed so many stoners when they're watching these compilations of these fly, and everyone just get so high and staring at it and they can't look away because it's beautiful.
Light. While they certainly aren't invincible, having one of the lower
Whoa.
HP stats among birds,
Whoa.
they're an often overlooked but undoubtedly successful bird build.
I'm surprised they're that high. Where are ducks
At the
by
bottom
the
of
way?
A tier, we have the Swan.
A
The
tier?
Swan is essentially a goose that has the power stat to actually back up its attempts to
Really?
intimidate. The wing attacks that most bird players use do very little damage and aren't very useful aside from pushing other players around. The Swan's wing attack can break bones and concuss foes.
Really?
Because of this, Swans are one of the best builds at controlling important points of interest, as their hyper-aggressive playstyle can result in huge territory
Whoa.
gains.
Whoa.
Of course, they do have the same weaknesses as geese, so targeting the Swan's neck with an attack can defuse the threat. But this is a bit riskier of a play against a Swan than against a goose. All around, sturdy defender, definitely A tier.
That's crazy. Owl!
Next in
Owls
A tier
are
we have
so
the
cool,
Owl,
too.
the avian faction's premier stealth assassin build. It owes this reputation to its special ability, which allows it to fly completely silently. This makes the Owl's strikes very difficult to defend against, as
Snow
players
Owl.
just about never see them coming. While not as stacked in the power department as their daytime counterparts, Owls do have quite solid base stats. While they aren't likely to one-shot high HP targets,
Whoa.
they do have enough force behind their attacks to be able to defend themselves and their territory, even from powerful enemies. In addition to granting the owl the silent flight perk, the owl's thick, bushy feathers offer additional defense against attacks, enabling it to stand its ground in important objective defense scenarios. Interestingly, the silent flight perk did come at the cost of the waterproof ability that most bird feathers have.
Really?
Meaning that falling into the water or getting caught in a rainstorm can actually disable the owl's flight ability. A pretty unique weakness,
What?
and certainly something that can be played around, but interesting nonetheless.
Looks so miserable. Yes,
In the middle of
Eagles!
A tier, we have the
No!
Eagles.
They're an A tier! Damn it! Just short of the big time, boys. We almost made it.
And hawks.
What's
Hawks
an
and
S
eagles
tier,
follow
then?
the same basic strategy, both having tailored their builds to focus on dealing maximum damage with their talons. Hawks are the smaller variants of this group, and because of this they are far more agile. While not as powerful as eagles, their agility enables them to weave
So
through
cool.
cover better than most birds of prey. This makes them well suited for rushing down players both in open terrain and in dense, difficult to navigate terrain like forests. Eagles, in contrast, are much more powerful, but their larger size and wider wingspan prevents them from entering dense forests. Still, in open prairies and mountains, eagles can be incredibly effective, dealing absolutely brutal damage with their enormous dagger-like talons. Enough to take down.
That clip was insane. It's just dragging this.
Still, in open
Poor
prairies and
goat.
mountains, eagles can be incredibly effective, dealing absolutely brutal damage with their enormous dagger-like talons.
I was like, oh, that's pretty bad, and then this huge chasm is what is dropping it down?
Enough to take down players in higher weight classes without even requiring team strategies.
Boom.
These are without a doubt some of the strongest bird builds in the game for
That's
PvP,
crazy.
and have been for quite some time.
Pelican is A tier?
At the top of A tier, we have the grappler tank hybrid, the Pelican.
Such
The
big
Pelican's
boys.
main strength is its throat pouch.
Look at that thing.
Grappling enemy players can be a highly effective takedown strategy, but birds struggle with this since they can't use their wings to grab, and since their beaks aren't always the most reliable grappling weapons.
I always think that these pelicans look like the closest thing to an IRL version of Kirby from Super Smash Bros. When you
Sometimes
see him
leading to
grab
targets
something.
escaping. The Pelican's grapple is, in contrast, almost totally inescapable, and works on targets much larger than you might think. While this attack style is most effective against fish, it's quite powerful against other bird, rodent, and amphibian players, although it does have its limitations. This, combined with the Pelican's overall bulk, makes it one of the most difficult birds to take down in single combat, and enables it to stand its ground against even top tiers like canines. So those of you who follow the channel for a while can probably guess what the top tier birds are going to be. If you can't, that's probably a good indication that you should be subscribed.
Don't target me!
Those of you wishing the devs could unban the Velociraptor build, look no further than the Secretary bird, as it has basically all the same awesome abilities and more.
This looks like an unhinged art teacher. This looks like an unhinged art teacher, like after they've had 7 margaritas on Taco Tuesday, and they're just like getting kicked out.
Hunting on foot and in pairs, they prove time and time again that striking from the sky is overrated. They can easily defeat other high-tier builds, such as the Cobra and Mongoose, with their high-damage kicks. Their stomp move has extremely high accuracy, allowing Secretary Bird players to score game-ending headshots with ease. And they do all this without completely sacrificing their flight ability.
That's crazy.
If they ever find themselves outmatched, which only ever happens against builds in higher weight classes, they can still retreat to the sky or treetops.
Those legs are so
The fact that this strategy works in Africa, one of the most unforgiving servers of all time, is proof enough to me that this is the optimal Raptor. These last 2 builds are about equally matched,
That's crazy.
both opting for the same specialization, intelligence.
Parrot!
Parrots are an extremely unique build with several powerful abilities, not the least of which is their Sonic Shriek, which can drive away just about any player who invaded their territory, especially when employed by a coordinated team. In addition, due to their prehensile beak,
You literally just annoying people out of your territory. It's like a superpower, just going annoying them so that they just leave. That's hilarious.
have the highest dexterity of any bird, putting them among the best users of the tool use ability. And with an extremely high lifespan, if there was any build that could replace humans if humans ever get their intelligence nerfed, I'd bet on the parrot. I made an entire video on parrots if you're interested, but when it comes to intelligence, there's one avian build that arguably outclasses them. Corvids, such as magpies, crows, and ravens, also opt for a high intelligence playstyle, but with a far more expansive social aspect to it. While plenty of bird builds use cooperative team strats, the best corvids operate using a network effect, where knowledge is shared with a huge amount of players over vast distances. This knowledge can include useful points of interest, or even blacklists of dangerous areas or players to avoid. But even individually, corvids have a lot going for them. With significantly higher stealth than parrots, corvids are much better at staying out of conflict. Their pointy beaks,
looked like something out of Edgar Allan Poe, didn't it?
While not as useful for tool use, are a much better combat tool for dealing quick damage. It's also more useful for pressuring and poking opponents, or for provoking larger players into battle, so that they can reap the benefits of the aftermath. Corvids are one of the best builds at making use of human-made items, and quickly figure out ways of abusing the system to score quick loot. All in all, corvids are basically what you'd get if you gave monkeys wings. Easily a top-tier build. So there you have it, the complete bird tier list.
That's amazing.
Or rather, as complete as I thought possible for YouTube. If I didn't do a segment on your favorite bird, please let me know in the comments.
I'm surprised you didn't cover ducks.
Despite being the longest video I've ever made, there were still a few birds that I cut from the video for time's sake, or because I felt I couldn't discuss the bird properly without getting into territory that was potentially too violent for YouTube. If you're interested in watching
What did that say? What did that say?
properly without getting into territory that was potentially too violent for YouTube.
No, I wonder why this bird prefers nesting in trees that have massive spikes everywhere. Surely it's purely coincidental and has nothing to do with psychopathic hunting behavior. What does it do?
If you're interested in watching the full director's cut version of this video, it's available to watch on Nebula, a subscription streaming service built by and for creators.
We'll have to check it out.
Nebula comes bundled for free with CuriosityStream, another awesome streaming service to this great little documentary called Edition of the Bird Tier List, as well as the Walking Birds documentary. Thank you so much for watching.
Well, that was a ton of fun, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Wesley. Subscribe down below for more reactions and comment. Let me know what other videos y'all want to see reactions to. We know what? I'm satisfied. My Eagle boys made it up to A tier, so that was pretty good. I guess we can't really complain about that. I learned so much. I had no idea vultures could literally spit acid. This was utterly fascinating. I always love when TierZoo uploads. That being said, guys, have an absolutely beautiful day. We also do the reactions live on twitch.tv/talk2Wesley if you want to come hang out and watch stuff with the boy. That being said, guys, I'm Wesley. Have yourself a damn beautiful day. I'm